Hi, I'm Joseph Kurt, and welcome to my storybook. Today, the part 12 of this book called T.D. Yates Before You Do. This is the part 12 in this book on page 179. Chapter 12 Before You Decide to Take a Risk for Low Marriage. To live is to choose, but to choose well, you must know who you are and what you stand for, where you want to go and why you want to get there. I was running late that day, as I often do when I'm trying to create more than 12, 24 hours were allowed. But no matter how full my schedule, I was not about to miss hearing my son, then 8, speak at the graduation ceremony for our church loop into Pride Middle Camp. An event designed to train children ages 6 to 12 to be entrepreneurial. I know it sounds a bit early, but in the inner city courses start at a young age, and we thought if we could guide kids to an impulsive version before the drug dealers or the dealers got a chance, then we might reverse the stats and make a difference. My son had been practicing messages, his message around the house for days. Because he had grown up watching me speak, he was pretty excited about having this opportunity. It was just a little event, intended the most by parents, but to him it was an Olympic error. So I knew I had to be there. Walking into the auditorium, I saw my wife over in the corner, backward on the main toward our son, who looked like a big time wrestler preparing for a bout in the ring. The moment I saw him, I knew he was a little nervous. My wife said he had inspired practicing alone and had spent most of the morning in a little waiting hour. In my best non-Hollywood voice, I said, "Hi, Dexter. How are you?" He looked up at me, a slight trace of treat on his ball, and said, "Okay, Dad, great." I said, pretending not to notice that he looked like he might have written down his leg and mine. He and I walked out to the waiting area just below the harbor, and I sat quietly, letting him prepare momentarily. Although I sensed he wanted to ask me something. Finally, he said, "Dad, when you have to speak, do you even get nervous?" I smiled and assured he did that I did. He looked a little revealed. He had learned that the hardest thing about doing something for the first time is learning was a normal part of the process and what's a rallying sign screaming, "You're about to make a big fool out of yourself." My son said, "So what do you do?" I said, "Son, I just pray about it and give it my best shot, aiming over all of my preparation and prayers. I just go for it." He said, "Well, maybe we should pray." So there in the little corridor just outside the door of a new experience, he and I prayed. I still get shook up at what a privilege it was to experience the movement with him, as he did an incredible job speaking. I had more tears in my eyes. Yes, I am embracing proud father, then a long girl chomping on his for the very first time, watching him pack back and forth across the stage, speaking like a pro. I wonder, is this the little boy who was about to pee on himself in the corridor a moment before? Of course it was, but such international crossing a fresh stakeholder. into the explanation of a new experience. Much like my son, Dancer, we all face new experiences with some degree of our English. But I said, feel the fear and do it anyway. Though it is not an original saying, it was for me, as we talk about some very particular things about relationships and marriage that may seem simpler to the pros. I want to encourage those who are rookies at the experiences. As you wait in your lights quabble like Dexter, trying to master the course to do something you've never done before. I want to spend a few months with you behind the scenes days like I did with Dexter, getting you ready and making you understanding that there is a normal anxiety that happens in the final moments before you jump into any new era of your life. The uncomfortable moment I will have hereafter refers to as the edge. The edge. The edge. For most people, the notice of life living on the edge mirrors the feeling I get when I stand on the edge of a roof. High places makes me extremely uncomfortable, particularly standing on the edge. I am not opposed to climbing out on the roof as much as I am standing on the edge of it. The journey towards making the decision can often be exciting and fulfilled in its own way. But when you get to that do or die moment, before right before it's time to pull the trigger and follow yourself into a new experience, it's not butterflies swimming in your stomach. It's swimming in a sea with all the shots of you fears, flaws, and failures. And often wondering how many times Dr. King had to go to the restroom before he made his famous speech in Washington. Seriously, I wonder how many times. Often we get while great people are the rights to have human feelings, fears, and insecurities. But but in so doing, we rise down to a status that attaches us from the polycamera that what? If we think that there are somehow synchronous and download with some special analysis, then we are somebody saying that we can never do anything expectational because of non-nominations. Recently, I was asked to attend a meeting with some of the very top officials of NBC and MSNBC. This highly politicized meeting took place over the course of the entire day, and I was astounded at how many of the top executives gave up so much valuable time. They asked us several questions about what it's like to do what we do, and while some people might not understand much about the black communities that we work in, they wanted to hear our experiences, particularly numbers, and know how their news mirror could embrace an aspect of faith and family, cultures, and community. More emphatically, the day of dialogue, it was as it was founded, took place with the editorial board of the company, and including Brian Williams. There says, of course, the argument, who fronts the Progressive Network News division, NBC News President Steve Coppers, and many other highly influential people. During the meeting, one of the main things we discussed in digital to all programs, entities, and community needs was the fact that most black caregivers are often asked to weigh in or suggest and perform tasks that the non-black collaborators do not. It is not uncommon for one of my members to ask me to look over a contract on the closing of a home. I am not a legal expert, but because they trust me, I find myself revealing many subjects that other spiritual leaders might not be asked to know. In most other cultures, single focus experts are more apt to advise members of their own culture. As we share the observation with the NBC team, they seemed fed attention to learn that we had classes on everything from the depth reduction to interpersonal internally to social equity. In my culture, you see, the church is a significant part of the community, and it's often that catalyst of change. Church is incomparable much of black progress, from civil rights to early college schools program to protein integration. Our current duties had included doing a radio one morning and going to a court trial to the next to help a mother get custody of her children. Having a pastor to come to our house closing just to get moral support is not usual for many of us. I have prayed over numerous house closing reviewer instant playing peoples and discussing living wills, not as an authority but just as a trusted ally who cares about the friends from their experiences. I have seen so many people in the nets in the novice monarchs before and progler of the new chances. I can tell you about the sweaty parents or the prosperity groom waiting with me in the back of the church to correcting his vows. I can tell you about a habiter for humanity homeowner about to have a reception for her new house, or a parent who fails a degree which students have half his age while working a full-time job. I have worked with playwrights off stage, with actors about to go on stage. I have worked with athletes before a major game and coaches after a mild setback. All the preparation in the world doesn't take away the feeling on gets on the edge. This exhilaration and frustrating nervous and raising feeling is often a part of facing some new and dangerous test. It's the human nervous system's fights on flight response into into one. I don't care how high up you go in life. Some events will always make your stomach clear and your throat dry. It is not the task that is intimidating as much as it is the newness of the task that makes the plugs go weak. Anytime life calls us away from our comfortable place in the families and asks us to do something on the edge of the or beyond our know that we find ourselves alone in the quarrel feelings, feeling like an 8-year old about to make his first speech. Some of us will even avoid making the change of face or facing the edge if we could. But God has a way of putting us in a place where we had no choice but to move from the safe scenery to the uncertainness of new experiences. If the terrifying, gut wrenching, soul tangling feelings of the vertigo, beyond the veil of fate and the full of pearl. We don't activate, activate either as unmerited when are facing the feelings as we do when we face the uncertain. It is all respecting for the grandeur of the decision that makes us a little eager, angry, and uncertain, grateful, and careful. It is the anxiety of newness buying that first home, or the worry of a long bride the night before her wedding. I am talking about the fright of the first time mother who wonders, do I have what it takes to bring a child into this world? I sat in the locker room with well-trained athletes who make millions of dollars for playing their game in the months just before they go out. The teasings in the room is thick and exhilarating. If it is not, they often will not win the game. Respect for the stakes often produces some degree of anxiety all by itself. The only way one can avoid these often in places never working feelings is to always play it safe by sticking to what is easier and friendly. But what a boring non-progress in life is to never virtually belong where you start. I met a man a few weeks ago while in Tobago. What, what Tobago? He told me he was 43 and had never left the island his entire life. I was speechless as I wondered how one could be content to live on an island 26 miles long and 6 miles wide for 40 plus years and never go beyond its limits borders. But then I know people who live in Fort Worth who had never gone into downtown Dallas, even though it's only a few miles away. Can you imagine that there are people who live in New York who had never been to the Broadway Broadway play, not because they can't afford it, but because they just never consider going beyond their normal wardrobe. I guess I'm just not one of those people who stay put. Sometimes you have to be pushed over the edge, or you will never go belong where you were born. Relationships do that. Marriage does that. For many of us to stay where we started is to die without growth. However, many of us will never have taken a chance in discovering the dimensions to our independence and interesting if circumstances have it forced in us into action. Our jobs force us to move. The promotion forced you to learn a new language. Learning assessment taught you to work with people who look different or dress different or was so different or disguising themselves from your for you in some way. You wouldn't simply push into what became a great and new experience in your life. Every so often, I believe God puts in us into these wonderful possibilities that we will never embrace if the decision will dampen ours. While any committed relationship, especially marriage, has its challenges, one of its blessings is that it brings us to the edge, all stored up, like an eagle that stores its nest, that hovers over its lawn. He spread his wings and caught them. He carried them on his promenades. The Lord alone guided him, and there was no four-wheeler God with him. He made him ride on the high place of the earth, and he ate the produce of the field, and he made him suck honey from the rock, and oil for the fragrant rock. Then the Deuteronomy 32 verse 11. The word in Deuteronomy says that God stirs up our lives like an eagle stirs his nest. Maybe you've been watching Animal Planet more than I had, but let me share what I learned about how mother eagles move their lawn to Mother Turtle. She rearranges her nest, the safe little haven she's built as a nursery for her brood, so that it becomes as uncomfortable as possible. Why would a mother treat her children this way? She doesn't want a nest full of dynastic trembles boys who cannot move along where they begin. She knows that if her babies stay in the nest, not only do they miss fulfilling their potential, but they are also become an easy target for larger survivors. It means being a little eaglet who has survived by opening a little mouth. Whoever your heart, the mother eagle come in what flesh food. No worries, no ailments, needs. Nothing to think about. No reason to fly. Perhaps you think your wings might be just for the direction. Direction. Then one day your mother begins to pull out the threads that she buried in the nets, making it uncomfortable for the eagles to rest any longer. Suddenly, localized corner has become limited with sharp objects that makes it difficult to rest where you once did. Now you are sitting on stacks, bricks, and dawns and realize that you must consider leaving in the borders of the families and step over the edge into a new experiences. This is what it means to stir the nest. It means that butt, your butt can't sit around any longer. Likewise, our God doesn't want us to stay where we settle but go belong to explore and experiences all that was created. Mirrors can stir the nest. A new job or a new house for the first time homeowner can be a nest starter experience. A child's birth, a move, a career change, downsizing, upsizing, empty netting, empty nesting. All these comparisons, what we will use or just moderate day color occurrences for the good old nest started moment in low life. Have you ever had one? I had many and constant to said that every so often a change occurs and I'm out of the nest and into the air, flapping it around or never before loose wings with the feeling of the full bladder and a much bigger thrill of life. In fact, as I look back, every so often I get a stimulus just as everything has settled down and gotten comfortable. Suddenly my family warden becomes sharp and pricky with that dealing war. Chains. I was privileged to have met Katie Kohler as she was strolling from her successful morning program to nighttime news. I met Michael Irvin not too long before he ended his NFL football career in a Saturday a life belonged to Phil. I watched Steve Harvey transform from stand-up comedy to radio host. Every insane person with their start will have something stored them up and move them everywhere they are at pro at what they did before. Fate in action. Like my son Dancer, you may experiences fear as a factor between you and what life, especially in marriage, will hang your nets. But if you can remember that eagles are pushed out of the nest by the discomfort of staying put so that they might fly for the first time, you might go over the edge with a little less fear and a lot more faith. The eagles long to fly being forced to put their faith into action. Many people come to meet with a business plan for startups that seems very sound. Madness. and incredible. I often challenge the part of this by asking, "Is this all you want? What will you What will you do in 3 years when you realize this level of success?" I encourage them to set their goals so high that they cannot achieve them on their own. Set low marriage goals high. Allow God to force you to fly. But, Bishop Chase, what if I fail? You may be saying, "I'm trying flying and falling to the ground a few times." If we return to those baby eagles, we'll see that they come mightily close to falling themselves, then floating and flat, and, yes, they fall, but the mother is always close enough to catch them up again. The falling is an inherent part of the flying. It is the cessation of falling that teaches them to fly. Internally, you may feel vulnerable and frightened, and wish you could go back to where you were before. But hold on, you are not in the air by yourself. The Lord is with you. And even though you are falling in a blur and making mistakes and closing on properly for the first time or moving up into a competitor where you will be swimming with sharks, don't be afraid. This is where your faith grows. It's born in January. It is in the wind. It is in the wind where you are flying and falling that you find God has a way of catching you and then releasing you to try again. Even if this is your second attempt, don't give up. Even if you feel that your first marriage was a failure, or your first house was foreclosure, or your first business went under, it doesn't mean that you should never try again. Scripture tells us to be cast down but not destroyed. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 9, which reinforce the truth that we can fall but not fail. Yes, just because you can feel yourself falling does not mean that you fail. There is a second chance and a door that is inherent in the process of teaching eagles to fly. Chickens don't need these repeat chances to fly because they never rise over 6 feet above the ground when they were born. But if you are an eagle, you were not made to play it safe. The sky is limit. As we go into the last few chapters, I want to share with you some practice tricks and preliminary points that can shield your life and empower your flight for the next stage of your decision making life. Dancer gave his speech that day, and I shed a tear as I watched him take his first flight into what only God and time will tell. I was just happy that I made it to see the plane take off. The eagles catching the wind, and my son moved into his destiny, with his nerves shaking and arms shaking it, with his nose shaking it and arms flailing. He found his voice and his message to a standing ovation. As we left that day, he said to me what you ought to be saying to your Heavenly Father: "Daddy, what's next? It's time to take a rest, and I'm here to help you before you do." That's the end of chapter 12 of this book. Tomorrow we'll be doing chapter 13, Before You Buy a House, on page 91. Until then, I'm Joseph Crudup. I will see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.